40 countries. They tell our shared story and call us to defeat darkness. I'm here to, I'm here right now with survivors of Hamas captivity and other hostage family members. Here in the United States, we are struck with incredible gratitude for President Trump's leadership. His unwavering support, moral clarity, and bold leadership has saved lives, and God willing, will save the life of my baby brother, Aviatar, and the lives of our loved ones still captives in the hands of the evil organization Hamas. President Trump knows the hostages are out of time. The deal that President Trump brought forward saved many lives and needs to continue until all hostages are saved. I would like to pray and read a verse from Isaiah to give strength and protection to President Trump, the leaders of the world, and our loved ones who are waiting for us to save them. When you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. For I am the Lord, your God. Amen. Thank you very much.
Well, it puts things in perspective, what we're facing around the world. As you know, we do these CPAC events all over the world, and many of you have joined us on these trips. And one of the things that I've noticed about myself is I can't read anything without my glasses. Let me do this right. So this year so far, we've returned from Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Australia, Japan, of course, Hungary, and of course, we've had CPACs in Korea, Hong Kong, a very special one, and of course, Israel. So what did we learn when we do these events? It's a lot of speeches, a lot of impassioned pleas for change in these countries. My takeaway are three big things. Number one, as an American, when I went to all these countries, I realized that freedom was done if America embraced Marxism. If we didn't take our country back with a constitutional order, a constitutional republic, the whole world was doomed. It was a matter of time before freedom was extinguished all over the world. That sounds, as an American, saying that somehow that's kind of like American colonialism is what I was taught when I was a child. You can use whatever phrase you want, but it's just the truth. And it was simple, common people in all these countries in different tongues telling me, for the love of God, please go back to your country and fix it. And they always ended that by saying, fix it by re-electing Donald Trump, always. And I first discovered this, Jay Aiba, when I went to Japan. It was our very first CPAC in a foreign country. And Jay started all this in Japan. And I ran into a bunch of beautiful Japanese women with red hats off in the distance. And I was like, that's funny. I guess they wear red hats with their own sayings in a lot of countries. And as I got closer, I realized they weren't different red hats. They were the same red hats that said, make America great again. And I had an interpreter with me, and I was like, in my irreverent way, I was like, why would you be wearing a hat that tells America to become great again? And they said, because for the very first time, America has a president who understands who our enemies are. And for the people in a tough neighborhood, like the people in Japan, Australia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, they understand the tough neighborhood that they're in. So we have to fix America. And guess what? You guys did it. Now, I think we had a very unique candidate. And actually, he did it. And maybe we could even argue theologically that God did it. But America's on the right track again. The other thing we learned is that when you study government, it's always about political parties, political parties, political parties. and Mr. Prime Minister and others here who are working very hard to make sure that our political parties are strong and better. That's very important work. But we're not going to get it done, certainly not in our country, just through political parties. We're going to get it done through organizations and voices like Steve Bannon, who you might argue is a one-man political party, or at least can lasso the grassroots like a lot of politicians would wish. So one of the things you'll notice on our schedule this year is this is meant not to be disrespectful to those of you who are elected officials, but fewer elected officials. It's not because they're not important, but clearly the presidency in America, whether you like it philosophically or not, is the center of power. And then the Supreme Court follows up behind it. I think the legislative branch is the third most important in our country. That's just commentary, whether we think that's the way the Constitution should be or not. And so what the president needs more than anything else is he has a Congress that will do its job, but also people in the country being organized to push back whenever the establishment in Washington, D.C. starts saying things like, that's not the right cabinet secretary to run that department. You can see what happened. The American people stood up and said, we had an election, we've already decided this, now get it done. And one commentary for all these Republicans who are now out there beating their breasts about all this misspending going on in government, I will remind you that 80% of them rubber stamped all of that spending when they said, let's not fight over spending. And then the final thing, and Gordon Chang reminded me of this. Where's Gordon? There he is. It's a worldwide movement. How ironic it is. We hate the globalists, but strangely enough, we built a global juggernaut. Minister, it's weird, but it is a fact. We're all working together to stop the global elites who want to destroy our civilization as we know it. And one of the ways they've done it so effectively in my country, in our country, is to instill fear in your hearts. And I will remind you, for those of us who are believers, fear is the opposite of faith. They instill fear in our hearts to paralyze us from speaking and to paralyze us from acting. And we're seeing a current example of that, Eduardo Bolsonaro, in the country of Brazil with your dad. We've been reading the headlines. Will you give us an update of what lawfare looks like in Brazil right now?
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Mercy, for the opportunity to talk again here to this qualified audience. Yesterday, my father was indicted for coup d'etat, attempted coup d'etat. We say that it's the Disneyland coup d'etat. Because imagine, put yourself instead of a real dictator, we are going to do a coup d'etat. So the first thing that you do is you start to appoint the commander of the army that was indicated, suggested by Lula da Silva. And when you are not president anymore, 1 week after that, then you send elderly and women, unarmed persons, to try to do this coup d'etat while you are in Disneyland. So these are the facts. My father wasn't even in Brazil when it happened there, the January 8th. It's a similar case that you have here with your January 6th. So the modus operandi is the same everywhere around, even in Albania, Brazil, United States. So it's not hard you to understand that what we are suffering now in Brazil, what my father was suffering, is the same thing that happened with Donald Trump here in the United States. But ending with this quick update, there are some good news. The wind is changing. The USAID case impact Brazil 100%. So we sure that with a decent and honest president as Donald Trump, for at least for the next year election, that we are going to have elections in October 2026, our enemies, they will not censor us. They will not have the financial support that they had with NED, Atlantic Council, and all of these disgusting organizations that use your money of the American taxpayer to go after us. So we really have a hope. And I also have to highlight here our friend Steve Bannon that is also helping us in this fight. It's a disgusting fight. And my father can even go to jail, for sure. This is not something that is out of the scenario. But at least not for corruption, not for laundering, not for drug dealing, or to be connected with the FARC or Nicolas Maduro, but because we gave, and we are going to give again, really hard days to this kind of people. Thank you.
The part of this is, we were told in our country that there's no election fraud, that elections are clean, that if you question elections, you are a coup, right? Plotter, you're an election denier. This is something we faced here for those of us who brought up clear examples of voter fraud, voter irregularity. You had that with your father's election. It's strange. I never understand the person that gets the biggest crowds always seems to lose.
He's the number one out of the error margin. My father is the only one that can beat Lula da Silva in 2026. That's why they're coming after us.
That's right.
Because they learned with Nicaragua that it's very bad when you arrest, when you jail your opponents. The dictator of Nicaragua, Nicolas Ortega, he jailed 7 of his concurrents, of his competitors for the presidency of that country. So now they are just turning the opponents non-eligible. Like Maria Corina Machado in Venezuela, my father in Brazil, and some other places, they are doing that. You don't have this law here that's turning someone non-eligible. We have that in Brazil. A court in Brazil can turn anyone in non-eligible person. So you cannot run in the election.
Well, that's why they wanted to put Donald Trump in jail, right? Because they were going to then argue. So, Ambassador Tan, you're facing similar problems in Korea, where there's a lot of irregularities, and it seems like a tool that's used in more countries is when you have a political disagreement with someone, you impeach them, you prosecute them, you try to convict them.
You're exactly right. It sounds like there's some common themes here across countries. And in South Korea, you have a coup in process, an insurrection happening, where the rightfully elected president, President Yoon, has been impeached, and they used a mechanism inside of Korea that's only supposed to be used for things like treason to arrest him, to throw him into solitary confinement, and now his case is before the Constitutional Court. And the person who wants to take over the country, Lee Jae-myung, the head of the Democratic Party of Korea, he's a communist. He has allegedly been forking over millions of dollars to North Korea, wants to turn the country over towards the Chinese Communist Party as well. And what's very ironic is many times the things they accuse President Yoon of are the very things they're doing themselves. They're saying he's an insurrectionist when they're trying to topple him from the rightfully elected presidency.
Mercy, we have someone who's probably a little jet lagged, traveling a little bit faster grill. Why don't you take it over from here?
Well, obviously, thank you all for being with us. And I know, Ambassador Grinnell, you have about 10 jobs you're doing right now. So we're so glad you can.
My daughters want tickets to all the good candidates.
Right, that's right.
It's okay.
So, but, Latin America is very near and dear to my heart with